Sunday mornings, we've been looking at some key events in the book of Genesis. We haven't been covering every verse, but we've been looking at key events. We're going to continue that this morning. If you got your Bibles, Genesis chapter 23, we'll begin reading in verse 1 and 2. The last few weeks, we've been talking about Abraham, and that's what we're going to pick up this morning. Sarah lived to be 127 years old. Verse 2, she died in Hebron in the land of Canaan, and Abraham went to mourn for Sarah and to weep over her. This morning we see a lifetime, or a long marriage between Abraham and Sarah comes to an end through death. You know, every marriage begins with 4 words, and those words are, will you marry me? Every marriage, or too many marriages, end with 4 words as well. I want a divorce. I believe that if people are careful with the first 4 words, then they will not become careless with the last 4 words. The 4 words, I want a divorce, are 4 words that God never intended to hear in a marriage. But those words are heard too often today. For instance, 38% of all first marriages fail. 79% of those who remarry, or 79% of those divorced will remarry, and 44% of those second marriages will fail. Did you know before the Civil War, divorce was very rare in this country? Matter of fact, if you divorced before the Civil War, most often you would have to have legislative action in order to do so. For instance, in 1870, there was only 1 divorce for every 34 marriages. Today we have what's called the quickie divorce, which is a standard rather than the exception. In 1960, just a little over 50 years ago, 1 out of every 4 marriages ended in divorce. Today, a little over 2 out of every 5 end in divorce. Matter of fact, some states have today a do-it-yourself divorce kit where you can bypass the courts if you have no children and you can get your own divorce. Today, people see marriage as not as a lifetime commitment, but as a 90-day option. The attitude is, if the first marriage fails, you keep married until you get it right. Matter of fact, you heard about this one woman. She was married 4 times. The first time she married a millionaire, then she married an actor, then she married a minister, and then she married an undertaker. She did all this on purpose, carefully planning out each marriage. So a friend came up to her and said, now, why did you marry a millionaire, then an actor, then a minister, and then an undertaker? And she said, 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready, and 4 to go. Charles Swindoll said there are 2 processes that we should never enter into life prematurely. The first one is embalming. You don't want to embalm somebody until they die. And the second process we enter into prematurely is divorce. When you look at the story of Abraham and Sarah, you see one of the greatest romances in all the Bible. It's one of the greatest stories of marriage in all of the Bible. They stayed together until death did them part. Now this morning, I want us to look at this precious couple. I want us to see how a man and wife should come together, be together, and stay together. 2 things I want to say this morning. 2 major points. First of all, I want us to go back and reflect. Am I echoing in y'all? It's aggravating me to death. Let me see if I can adjust here. Move this out a little bit. Maybe that's a little bit better. First of all, I want us to see the memory of a lifelong marriage. Now notice the scripture says Sarah was 127 years old when she died. Now can you imagine the changes that took place physically in her life? For instance, we know the scripture says she was a beautiful lady, but now 127 years old, she probably had some bulges and she probably had some bunions. But notice Abraham loved her to the very end. There was one couple, they were not like one couple who was having a conversation, and the husband looked over at his wife and said, will you love me while I'm old and gray? His wife said, not only will I love you, I will write to you wherever you are. Most couples in that day and time got married at a very young age. Therefore, we can assume, if Sarah was 127 years old when she died, we can assume that she and Abraham probably been married for over 100 years. That's a long time. Now, one of the reasons Abraham was such a successful man is because he had such a successful marriage. So, if you want to be successful as a man, I would advise you to try to have a successful marriage. Matter of fact, Town & Country Magazine did a little survey, and they were surprised at the results of what they found. What they thought was that all these folks that are presidents of these corporations, these men that are presidents of these corporations, they thought that they're kind of be swingers, going from one woman to another woman, da-da-da. But they began to examine the top 100 corporations in America, and they were surprised at what they found. Among those 100 top corporations, people who ran them in America, they only had a divorce rate of 5%. In other words, the study said that a strong marriage was a major contributor to a man's success in life. But Abraham not only had a successful marriage, but notice, he had a sweet faith. He lost it. Now his heart is crushed. His heart is breaking because this 100-year marriage now had been broken up because of death. Now, when you look at their life, Abraham and Sarah had a lot of ups and downs. For instance, we read the story, we talked about this a few weeks ago. We didn't emphasize a whole lot, but Abraham and Sarah was down in Egypt, and Abraham was worried about his life, and so he told a lie. He said that Sarah was not his wife, that Sarah was his sister in order to save his hide. Can you imagine, that's just a blatant lie he told. And then Abraham had to put up with a concubine, Hagar, whom his wife Sarah forced upon him. And so Abraham had to learn the hard way that one woman is plenty for any man. They had conflict in their marriage. They had to put out Ishmael out of their household. They had problems in their marriage. But notice, they did not make it by chance. They made it by choice. In other words, they hung in there. They stayed together. They both knew in a marriage, winners never quit and quitters never win. They lived together. They loved together. They laughed together. They learned together. But no longer would they be together on this earth because the Scripture says Sarah had died. And notice, now he's brokenhearted. Abraham is not the same. A part of him, his life is now missing. But notice, he knew where she was. He knew that she was in heaven. One of my favorite preachers from old is Dr. Vance Havner. And Dr. Vance Havner, when he lost his wife, somebody came up and said, Dr. Havner, I'm so sorry you lost your wife. And he smiled and said, nothing is lost when you know where to find it. Abraham was not weeping for Sarah. He was weeping for himself. He was so glad that he kept his vows. He is glad that he had kept the command of one wife for one life. Abraham was glad that he had given his child the greatest gift that parents can give any child on the face of the earth, and that's a stable marriage and a solid home. Now, the second thing I want us to look at is not only the memories of a lifelong marriage, but I want us to think, second of all, about the mates of this loving marriage. Sarah and Abraham set an example of the kind of husband and wife that can make for a very happy marriage. Each brought their own unique contributions to this relationship. Now, we're going to think for just a few minutes about Sarah, and then we're going to think for a few moments about Abraham. First of all, I want us to think about Sarah's spirit. She just had a remarkable spirit in life. The Bible tells us that Sarah was one of the best loved and the best looking woman in history. She had made a marvelous mate, and she was a wonderful wife. Matter of fact, this verse, I went through the Bible, but I never saw this verse, and it's not on the screen because it's just a simple verse. But Isaiah 51, verse 2 in the Old Testament, they're talking about Israel, and Isaiah says, look to Sarah. If you want a good example, look to Sarah. Isaiah 51, verse 2. But then we come to the New Testament, and the New Testament holds up the same example. Peter, a preacher named Peter, says, hey, women, if you want to be successful, look to Sarah. She's a good person to model your life after. She had some faults, she had some shortcomings, but overall, she was a very good woman that you can model your life after. And so the key is not how a wife looks on the outside, but what she is on the inside. Now let's look at how Sarah was in the inside. Now, 1 Peter, I mentioned this, but I almost to look at that. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 6. And for some reason I preached on this, but this never really stood out to me until I was prepared for this message. But notice, verses 1 through 6 talks about marriage. And then verse 6 we come to, it says, like Sarah, who obeyed Abraham. Now that word I know scares a lot of women there. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. In other words, it's talking about a model marriage, and then it says in verse 6, like Sarah. And so we see in the Old Testament, she's held up as a person that you can model your life after if you're a woman. And now in the New Testament, Peter does the same thing. It says, model your life after Sarah. Now, what was it, ladies, about Sarah that made her so remarkable? Why did Isaiah, why did Peter uphold her as an example for you to follow? Well, there's some reasons that we're going to look at. First of all, we see right there she has a submissive spirit. Sarah was submissive to Abraham. Now today when you talk about women being submissive to husbands, listen, you may get tarred and feathered on the street today when you talk about that. But the goal of submission in a marriage is not to reduce a woman to a doormat, but it's to provide authority structure within the home, within the marriage. You know, I don't care what organization it is, what business organization it is. You can name any business organization you want to on the face of the earth, but every business organization must have defined authority structure and a good relationship within that structure. Now, when the employees submit to the authority structure, the organization does what? It prospers. Everything runs smoothly. But what happens when the organizational structure gets all messed up? Well, what's going to happen in that company? Morale is going to get low. Productivity is going to go down. And many times that business will fail. Likewise, a marriage has to be run by God's authority. And if it's not run by God's authority, morale within that marriage and productivity within that marriage will go down itself. Now, let's go back and look at verse 1 and 2 of this third chapter. Wives, in the same way, be submissive to your husbands, so that if any of them do not believe the word, they might be won over without words by the behavior of their wives, when they see the purity and reverence of your lives. Now here's the question. Should you as a woman listen to a man that you're married to that's ungodly? That's a major question. Now let me just say this. If you hear and you're a woman and you have a lost husband, you're not going to nag or preach thy husband into the kingdom of heaven. Matter of fact, let me just say this. A lot of husbands are kept away from the kingdom of God by nagging wives. In other words, sometimes you can do more harm than you can good by nagging. It's kind of like one man said, things really do change in marriage from the first year to the 15th year. He said, when I first got married, I'd come home from work, my little dog would run around barking at me, and my wife would bring me my slippers. He says, today when I walk in, the dog brings me the slippers, and the wife goes around barking at me. Things do change, doesn't it? And you know, there's a lot of women out there, they want to see their husband saved. They want to see their husband in the kingdom of God. They want to see their husbands in church with them. They want to see their husbands conduct themselves in a godly way. That's noble, and that's good. But you're not going to drag them into the kingdom of heaven. In other words, what you must do, first of all, you need to pray for your husband. And you're going to meet folks out there today that's probably, probably as I'm speaking, you can think of several women today, they're godly, but their husbands are not Christians. They're going to come to you for advice. What do you say to them? This is what I'm going to say. First of all, pray for your husband. Pray for him every single day. And then let God change him. You can't change him. You let God change him. I believe if you pray for him, God will change him. Now, Ruth Graham said this, it's my job to love Billy Graham. It's God's job to make him good. You see, Sarah has a submissive spirit. But not only did Sarah have a submissive spirit, but second of all, we see Sarah had a sensitive spirit. Look at verse 3 and 4. Your beauty should not come from outward adornment, such as braided hair, the wearing of gold jewelry and fine clothes. Instead, it should be that of your inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is a great worth in the sight of God. So notice, not only did she have a submissive spirit, but Sarah had a sensitive spirit. Why was Sarah so beautiful on the outside? I'm going to tell you why. It was because she was beautiful on the inside. You see, the only beauty that you have that's lasting beauty is what's on the inside. Outward beauty is going to fade for every single woman that you will meet. I told you the story one time. We had a 20th class reunion. Now, I've seen very few folks I graduated high school with, but when I was in the 4th grade, boy, I had a crush on a girl. I thought she was the most beautiful girl that I've ever seen on the face of the earth. Well, when I saw her at the 20th anniversary, somebody said, there she is over there. And I went, are you sure? I thought, number one, either I had bad eyesight then, or she sure had changed. I probably had bad eyesight back then, I don't know. But she lived a rough life. But you see, that's what I'm saying. The main thing is inner beauty. That's what the Bible stresses. Now, ladies, if you want to be beautiful, this is what I suggest. Make up your heart before you make up your face. Make sure your heart is right with God before you make up your face. So Sarah had a submissive spirit. Sarah had a sensitive spirit. But then notice, Sarah also had a servant spirit. Look at verse 5 and 6. Well, this is the way the holy women of the past who put their hope in God used to make themselves beautiful. They were submissive to their own husbands. In other words, she had a servant spirit. Now, what's this word obey? Doesn't that just make some of you women a little nervous? It would. I was a woman, to be honest with you. What does that word mean? What that word means really is this. She pays attention to her husband. That's really what that word means. She pays a lot of attention to her husband. You see, Sarah met Abraham's needs. Now, what kind of needs does a man have? He has emotional needs. He has physical needs. He has mental needs. He has domestic needs. And Sarah met those needs in Abraham's life. You see, Sarah and Abraham had to learn something that's hard for us to learn in society today, and this is what we need to learn. In other words, you do not marry somebody for what you can get from that person, but you marry that person for what you can give to that person. You see, so many people today, they go into marriage thinking, I could get this, and this, and this, and this. Well, no, that's the wrong attitude. You married to give, not to get. Matter of fact, what did Jesus do? He was a giver. He was not a getter. But so many times people go in there and say, well, I'm not getting anything out of this marriage. What are you putting into it? What are you putting into it? You're supposed to give. You're not supposed to get as much as you're to give. And so Sarah was held up as an example because she has a submissive spirit, she has a sensitive spirit, and she has a servant spirit. Now let's think about Abraham for just a minute. Abraham really is not mentioned in 1 Peter. But I think in verse 7, he's implied. It talks about Sarah, so it implies something about Abraham there. And so we see the traits there of a good, godly husband. Now, do you know what the word husband means? Really what it means is house band. House band. In other words, the husband is a band that reaches around the house to protect it, to provide for it, to defend it, to hold it up, to keep it together. Now, what did Abraham bring into this marriage? We talk about what Sarah brought. What did Abraham bring? First of all, Sarah had Abraham's presence. In other words, notice that Peter says, likewise your husbands dwell with them. Verse 7 is not on the screen, by the way. But notice, what I'm saying here is, your wife ought to be your best friend. Your wife is not only your best friend, but ought to be your partner, ought to be your number one counselor, ought to be your most trusted advisor. That's what a wife ought to bring to the marriage, or give to the husband. And so Sarah had Abraham's presence. He was there. You see, too many husbands live in a home, but they're never there. They're somewhere else. They're playing golf. They're fishing. They're duck hunting. And a man needs a hobby, by the way. I don't want any man to go home and say, hey, you got me in trouble this morning because I like to do these things, and my wife nags me about it. But what I'm saying, every man needs a hobby. But folks, you need to be at home sometime. You need to be there. You need to spend some time taking care of things in your home. Now, wives, let them do some of their hobbies. But don't let that hobby replace your presence there in the home, because you need to be there. And so too many husbands live in a home, but they're never there in the home. So Sarah had Abraham's presence. But then also Sarah had his patience. In other words, it says, dwell with him with understanding. No man should ever quit trying to understand his wife. And you know, you're not going to ever fully understand women as a man. You know that. But you should never try to quit understanding your wife. Someone said this, first seek to understand, and then to be understood. So to be understood, a woman needs what? She needs attention and she needs affection. Men, does your wife know this morning that you love her more than anyone else or anything else? Does she know that this morning? If she doesn't, she needs to know that. In other words, men, you ought to love your wife more than you love your children. You wouldn't have your children if you didn't have your wife. Now, I love my children, but my children know who's number one. And that's their mom. They know that. That's scriptural. And so you love your mate more than you love your children. Now, I'm not saying throw your children down or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. But you need to love your mate. You know, somebody might say, what about a second marriage? You know, somebody might say, I'm in a second marriage. There's a child by the first marriage. Let me just say this. A couple should never get married unless, when they come together, if they can't love the other partner's child just like their own, they shouldn't get married. That's just a fact of life. Because when you get married, you marry everybody. You marry their children. You marry their whole family. And so you need to love them just like you love, just like they were your own. That's the way you ought to love them. And, but does your wife know that you love her more than anything else? You know, it's kind of near the end of the football season. And you know how some men are during football season. They get glued to that television. They don't want to miss a play. And so finally this woman, this wife, she was at the limit of her frustration because her husband had been glued to the television every Saturday, every Sunday, and she had just, or he had just totally ignored her. So finally one day, she just got in front of the television. She stomped her foot, and she looked at him and said, now I want to ask you a question. I want to know right now, which do you love more, me or football? Well, the husband kind of sheepishly looked down, and all of a sudden he looked up, and he smiled and said, well, I want you to know I do love you more than I love hockey. Sarah had Abraham's presence. Sarah had Abraham's patience. But Sarah also had Abraham's praise. Peter says, give honor to the wife. Now, what does that word honor there mean? It means precious. We're letting our wives know how precious they are to us. Matter of fact, a man went home with a friend for dinner one evening, and noticed as soon as they got to the door, his friend reached over, kissed his wife, looked at her and said, you're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen on the face of the earth. After dinner, they sat down and ate. After dinner, he said nice things to his wife, and he kissed her again. So his buddy looked at him and said, you always do that? The man said, you bet I do. It keeps our marriage happy. Well, this man was greatly impressed, and he decided to use the same procedure with his own wife. So that night, when he walked to the door, he swept her in his arms, gave her a big kiss, and he said, sweetheart, you look wonderful tonight, and I am so lucky to have you as my wife. His wife looked surprised. She began crying, and he said, what on earth is wrong? And she looked at him and said, y'all, honey, it's been a bad day. First, our son sprained his ankle. The washing machine broke down, flooded the basement, and now, lo and behold, you come home drunk. Sarah had his praise. But also notice, Sarah had his prayers. Notice it says, so that your prayers may not be hindered. Husbands, you ought to pray for your home. Prayers would hinder more divorces. Prayer would hinder more divorces unless prayer was hindered in their marriages. In other words, you need to pray for your mate. You can't change him, but God can. Martin Luther once said, let the wife make the husband glad to come home, and let him make her sorry to see him leave. I like that. I'm going to say that again. Let the wife make the husband glad to come home, and let him make her sorry to see him leave. You know, that's what a whole lot of it. Now, number 3, I want you to think that about the master of a loving marriage. And we're almost through this morning. But I want you to think about it. And this is very important. The only sword that was sharp enough to cut this marital cord was the sword of death. They had their ups and downs, they had the difficulties, but nothing could break that bond except death. Now notice, what was this 3 strong cord? Matter of fact, I want to read Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 12. Notice what it says there. Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. And then notice, a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Why was Abraham and Sarah's marriage strong? How was he able to go through such adversity? Is because they had a 3-strand cord. They held them together. First of all, Abraham was committed, Sarah's committed, but also they had God. The glue that held them together was God. And let me just say this, the glue that's going to hold most marriages together in the society that we live in with all the pressures today is going to be God. That's the reason I make no excuse, no apology. I tell folks all the time, when they come to talk to me about getting married, I just look and say, if you'll keep God in the center of your marriage, you don't stay in church, I'm probably wasting my time. I didn't used to say that, but I'm older now, and might as well tell them the truth, whether they like it or not. But that's true. You know, if they're not going to make a commitment to be in church, I'm wasting my time. It's probably not going to last with all the stress and strain of marriages today. But notice, I want you to see something. I want you to see the secret of Abraham and Sarah's marriage. I think the secret of marriage is found in Genesis chapter 18, verse 19. Notice what it says. For I have chosen him so that he will direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and doing what is just, so that the Lord will bring about for Abraham what he has promised him. In other words, that verse says God was what? He was in the center of their marriage. 2 out of 5 marriages, I mentioned a while ago, 40% of the marriages in America went into divorce. Now you heard that. Did that sink in? About 40%, 2 out of 5 went into divorce. But I want you to hear this. For husband and wife both know the Lord, where they really are committed to Jesus. I'm not talking about just going to church. I'm talking about where they're really committed. I'm talking about where they read their Bible, where they pray, where they take their faith seriously, take the matters of God seriously, where they worship together, where they go to church together. Are you ready for this? They tell us that 1 out of 1,015 marriages end in divorce. Don't tell me that God doesn't make a difference. Don't tell me that coming together and worshiping together doesn't make a difference. It makes a lot of difference. Now let me just say this. The courts may grant divorce. Hollywood glamorizes divorce. You may have friends that are getting into divorce. But I'm going to tell you something. Parting is not sweet sorrow. In other words, it brings difficulty. That's the reason today, let me encourage you to pray together, play together, and stay together for the glory of God. Let us pray. Father, we're preparing now for a time of invitation. We know America is hurting today. Children are hurting all across our land because they do not have stable homes, because there's unstable marriages in our land. Oftentimes when there's a divorce, mates will move on. The children bear those scars for eternity. I pray today, Father, that those who are here together, who are here today, will make a commitment to strengthen their marriage. That they will pray, that they will make a commitment to each other today, that in spite of the difficulties that they may be having, in spite of how hard things are, in spite of the ups and downs, that they'll make a vow today that they're going to do all they can in their power to make that marriage last. I pray today if there's someone here that's struggling in their marriage, that today, Father, they may not even come down front, but right there in that pew, they'll make a commitment to you that they're going to try to change and do and live by godly principles. There may be a husband or wife here today